Andy in the attic here with another tale from my experiences in psychiatry. Now, this one isn't quite so positive, mind you. Actually, the last one wasn't either. I ought to just preface this. Actually, the majority of people I worked with within the psychiatric services which I worked were fantastic people, mostly well-intentioned, did a lot of good work, and overwhelmingly kind. I think that'd be fair to say. However, in amongst all of that, there's a lot of madness that takes place that has nothing to do with mental illness. And that's the kind of stuff I wanted to highlight, because these little tiny things can make such an enormous difference. Now, this particular story comes from pretty much actually when I finished working in psychiatry, I got sacked. It wasn't the only time I got sacked. I may well go through all the times I got sacked, or I might not. A bit embarrassing, some of them. Now, this one was a premier psychiatric unit. It was a daycare centre. So essentially, this was people came in for the day and then would go home again at night. Or they may even be coming in from other centres. A lot of the work this place did, it was respite. So there's a lot of people who are a lot older, who have mental health needs, who are being cared for by family. And sometimes they would come to us, say 1 day a week, whatever, in order to give the family a bit of a break. And also, it gives a bit of variety to the patient. Although I think we call them customers, actually, in this place. Bit weird, if you ask me. There's a weird thing in the NHS, and it's also happening in the US as well, where health workers are encouraged to adopt a business mindset, a business model for medicine, and psychiatry is a branch of medicine, and to think of their patients as customers, really. Very, very strange indeed. Now, on this particular day, it was quite a quiet day. There was lots of people in, and I was asked to go and do a memory test or memory inventory on a little lady who was just sitting across the room from me. She had dementia. She was what we would call happily confused. So behaviorally, she was quite appropriate. Needed supervision, but wasn't a problem to herself or anyone else. And all of her behaviours were contextually appropriate to the environment in which she was in, and she was always seen to be quite pleasant and in quite good mood. She was in pretty much still the early stages of dementia. However, it was very noticeable that this lady had dementia. I was asked to go and do a memory test on her. Now, I responded, as I used to do quite a lot back then, with why? Why would I do that? The first reply came back, because I'm asking you to. That's not going to work with me, I can tell you. Just because you're in an authority over me and ask me to. Okay, but that doesn't really answer my question. Why? It got upgraded. Because I'm telling you to. There's a tone now. Okay, that's not going to work either. This is why I'd never fitted into the military. Not very good at following orders blindly. And I said, okay, I just need to know, why am I doing a memory test on a lady who has a progressive neurological degenerative disorder? It's not going to get better. There's no medical treatment that we're offering. All we're doing is supplying respite 1 day a week to the family, where she comes with us and she seems to have quite a nice time. Why would I proceed to do a memory inventory on this particular lady? Well, it's what we do. It's needed for the notes. Yeah, it's needed for the notes, but is it needed for the patient? In what way is the patient... Now, you can imagine, this is not a conversation this poor staff nurse is really expecting to be having on a fairly ordinary day where everyone is pretty compliant, including the other staff. Doctor comes across. I'm basically told I have to do this because it's required for the notes. Okay. I'm not interested in the notes. I'm interested in the care of the patient. So this is my argument back. This lady who's currently sitting over there with her progressive, degenerative, neurological disorder, dementia, in whatever form that was for her, is going to deteriorate over time, and that's going to be very distressing for both her and her family. Currently, she's sitting over there having quite a nice afternoon. You want me now to go over to her to do a memory test, which you and I both know she's going to fail, in order to remind her why she's here. At the moment, she doesn't know why she's here because she's not even thinking about it, because she's just in her little happy space. And I'm going to ruin her day every time she comes here. So you're going to ask me to do this every week, aren't you? To remind her that she is in a care facility and that she has a progressive, degenerative neurological condition. How is that benefiting the lady? We'll talk about this later in the office, as another member of staff took the piece of paper and went over and did the necessary test. Now, this is the classic problem of, are we there to fulfill the needs of the institution, or are we there to fulfill the needs of the patient? One of the things we used to talk about in neuro, in general neuro, as opposed to psychiatry, if these patients didn't come into this hospital, we could actually get the job done, because we were so busy filling forms in, attending meetings, doing all that kind of stuff. And the patients were a massive inconvenience to a very well-run hospital. It almost like everything we did on the department was primarily for the maintenance of the organization, and the patients were entirely secondary. I say they were an inconvenience to the system. And I understand there's a fine line. You have to run the organization in order to run a hospital to provide care. But where the primary focus is no longer about the patient's well-being, for the patient's interest, and the patient is now only fitting into the institution. Meanwhile, the institution pretends not to be an institution. Institutionalization went out in terms of the terminology when Erving Goffman's book started to become published and widely read. If you haven't read Erving Goffman's book, Asylums, you must read it. We changed the language of the institution. Just like we didn't call them patients, we called them residents or customers, because apparently that changes everything. But the institutions did not change. They only changed the language. And so now the institutions pretend not to be institutions whilst behaving like institutions. And now what do we do with the people who are now caught in those institutions where we lie to them on a daily basis? We drug them. And then when they show signs of distress and they show, oh, I don't like it here, I don't like it here, increase the dose. Yeah, anyway, that's today's rant. As always, do click the like button. I'm interested in any comments. And if you have any stories yourself, stick them in the comment section. It's always interesting.
This is